Imagine a map so detailed, so perfect, that it covers the entire territory it represents, point for point, exactly. Now imagine that over time, the real territory underneath begins to decay and crumble and disappear. But the map survives. And people go on living on the map, navigating by the map, treating the map as the real thing, never noticing that the actual land it once described is gone. There is no territory anymore. There is only the map. And here is the truly disturbing part. Nobody misses the territory because nobody remembers it was ever there. They were born on the map. To them, the map is simply reality. That is the world a French thinker named Jean Baudrillard claims you are living in right now. His book is Simulacra and Simulation, published in 1981, and it is one of the strangest, most unsettling, and most prophetic books of the last century. The book, famously, that inspired The Matrix. In this video, I'm going to take you all the way through it. What a simulacrum actually is, the 4 stages by which an image murders reality and takes its place, what he means by the hyper-real, why he says Disneyland exists to hide a secret about America, and why he believed that in our world the copy has not just replaced the original, it has abolished the very idea that there ever was an original. This is difficult, mind-bending material, and I'm going to make it clear. Stay with me all the way to the end, because Baudrillard's final claim is the most radical thing anyone has ever said about the age of screens and information, and once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it in your own life. Let me start by fixing that opening image, because Baudrillard opens the book with it, and it's the key to everything. He takes an old fable about an empire that made a map so perfect it was the exact size of the empire itself, covering everything one-to-one. In the original story, the map is eventually seen as useless and left to rot, fraying at the edges out in the desert. But Baudrillard says that fable no longer describes our situation, because for us, something has reversed. It is no longer the map that decays while the real territory endures. It's the opposite. Today, he says, the map comes first. The models, the images, the representations come before the real. And it is the territory, the actual real thing, that has withered away beneath them. He calls this the precession of simulacra. Precession, meaning it goes first, it comes before. The copy now precedes and generates the real instead of the real generating the copy. We build the model first, and then reality is made to conform to the model, or is simply replaced by it. That single inversion, the copy coming before the original, the map before the territory, is the earthquake underneath the entire book. Now, to understand how we got here, you need Baudrillard's most useful and most concrete idea, the 4 successive phases of the image. He argues that the relationship between images and reality has gone through 4 stages across human history, and each one takes us further from reality, until, at the end, reality is gone entirely. Follow these carefully, because they are the spine of the whole argument. In the first phase, the image is a reflection of a profound reality. The image is basically faithful. It's a good copy, a representation that points honestly back to something real that exists behind it. Think of a straightforward portrait that genuinely resembles the person. The image is a servant of reality. It shows you something true. Baudrillard calls this a good appearance. The image is in the order of what he calls sacramental representation. Reality is still firmly in charge, and the image humbly reflects it. In the second phase, something darker begins. The image masks and distorts a profound reality. Now the image is unfaithful. It misrepresents, it hides, it lies about the reality behind it. But, and this is crucial, there is still a reality behind it that's being distorted. The image is an evil appearance, a mask over something real. You can still, in principle, tear off the mask and find the truth underneath. Reality still exists. It's just being betrayed by the image. In the third phase, the ground gives way. The image masks the absence of a profound reality. Now the image pretends to be a faithful copy, but there is nothing behind it. It's covering up the fact that the reality it claims to represent is gone or was never there. The image plays at being a representation, but it's a representation of nothing. It conceals not a hidden truth, but the absence of any truth at all. This is the image as sorcery, pretending to point at something real to hide the fact that reality has vanished. Think of a photograph of a place that no longer exists, presented as though it's still there. The image keeps the corpse warm, hiding the death of the thing. And in the fourth phase, the one Baudrillard says we now live in, the image has no relation to any reality whatsoever. It is its own pure simulacrum. It no longer masks reality, no longer distorts it, no longer even hides its absence, because reality is no longer part of the equation at all. The image now refers only to other images. The copy is a copy of a copy of a copy, with no original anywhere in the chain, and no one looking for one. This is the simulacrum in its pure form, a copy without an original, an image that is real in its own right, and points to nothing beyond itself. We have moved from images that reflect reality, to images that replace it, to images that simply are the only reality we have. So what is a simulacrum exactly, now that we've traced its birth? A simulacrum is a copy of something that has no original. Normally we think of a copy as a reproduction of some real, original thing. But a simulacrum is a copy for which no original ever existed, a representation that represents nothing real, that generates its own reality out of itself. And Baudrillard's staggering claim is that our entire civilization now runs on simulacra. The images, models, and signs we live among no longer refer to any underlying reality. They refer only to each other in an endless self-contained circuit, and we live inside that circuit and call it the world. This is what leads to his central concept, the one word you most need to take from this book, the hyperreal. Baudrillard says we now live in hyperreality, a condition in which the distinction between the real and the simulation has completely collapsed, and the simulation has become more real, more vivid, more compelling than reality itself. The hyperreal is realer than real. It's a reality manufactured from models and images that has become so total, so seamless, that there is no longer any real outside it to compare it to. You cannot step outside the simulation to check it against reality, because reality, in the old sense, is no longer accessible. It's been absorbed, replaced, generated by the models. Think of how a perfectly airbrushed, digitally constructed image of a human face can feel more beautiful, more definitive than any actual human face. So much so that real faces start to seem like flawed copies of the ideal image, rather than the image being a copy of them. The model has become more real than the thing. That's hyperreality. The map is realer than the territory, and we prefer it. Now let me give you Baudrillard's most famous and most misunderstood example, because it makes all this concrete and it's genuinely brilliant. Disneyland. Everyone assumes Disneyland is obviously fake, a fantasy land of cartoon castles and make-believe,
clearly separate from the real America outside its gates. Baudrillard turns this completely inside out. He says, yes, Disneyland is presented as imaginary, as fantasy, as clearly not real. But that is precisely its function, a kind of trick. Disneyland exists, he argues, to make us believe that everything outside it is real. It's there to conceal the fact that the real America, the country beyond the gates, with its manufactured desires and staged politics and packaged experiences and endless media images, is itself no more real than Disneyland. The whole country has become a kind of Disneyland, a hyperreal simulation. And Disneyland is the decoy that hides this. By presenting itself as the one obviously fake place, it reassures us that the rest is authentic. Baudrillard's dizzying conclusion. Disneyland is presented as imaginary in order to make us think the rest is real, when in fact all of it, Disneyland and the country around it, belongs to the same order of simulation. The fake exists to disguise the fact that the real is also fake. He makes a parallel point about scandal and corruption, and it's equally unsettling. Think about how political scandals work, how we get outraged when we discover corruption, when the mask comes off and we see the real dirty truth behind the official image. Baudrillard suggests that the exposure of scandal actually serves to reassure us that there's a difference between the corrupt and the honest, between the fake and the real, that somewhere real integrity and real truth still exist, being violated by the scandal. The scandal regenerates our faith in a reality principle. But what if, he asks, the whole system is simulation all the way down? Then scandal functions to hide the fact that there is no non-scandalous reality to return to. It keeps alive the comforting belief in a real that no longer exists. The revelation of the fake exists to make us believe in the real. This connects to one of his most provocative claims about the difference between pretending and simulating, and you have to slow down for it, because it's the philosophical heart of the danger. If you pretend to be sick, Baudrillard says, you can just get up and you're fine. Pretending leaves the reality principle
intact. There's still a clear line between the real and the faked. But if you simulate an illness, if you actually produce in yourself the symptoms of the illness, then something breaks down. Is it real or is it faked? The doctor can no longer tell. The symptoms are real symptoms. The line between true and false, between real and imaginary, dissolves. Simulation isn't pretending, because pretending leaves reality untouched. Simulation threatens the very difference between the true and the false, because it produces the real effects of the thing it simulates. And that, he says, is what our whole culture now does. It doesn't pretend, it simulates, and in doing so, it erases the line between the real and the fake so thoroughly that the question, "Is this real?" stops even having an answer. Now let me pull us toward the part that will hit closest to home, because Baudrillard was writing in 1981, before the internet, before social media, before smartphones. And yet he described your daily life with uncanny precision. He was obsessed with media, with the flood of images and information, and he made a claim that sounds insane until you sit with it. We live in a world of more and more information and less meaning. Information, he says, doesn't produce meaning, it devours it. We are drowning in images, in news, in content, in signs, a total saturation. And rather than this making the world more meaningful, more real, more understood, it does the opposite. The endless flood of representation dissolves reality into a kind of static, a buzzing screen of signs that refer only to other signs. He called this implosion, not explosion, outward, but implosion, inward, the collapse of meaning, of distinctions, of the boundaries between things, as everything gets absorbed into an undifferentiated flow of media and simulation. The real, the imaginary, news and entertainment, the event and its coverage, all of it implodes into one hyperreal soup where nothing can be distinguished from anything else. And here's where it becomes genuinely eerie. Baudrillard argued that in this media-saturated world, events themselves start to be shaped by their own representation, that things happen in order to be images, staged for the media, scripted for the coverage, so that you can no longer separate the event from its broadcast. The event and the image of the event become the same thing, and often the image comes first. The event is manufactured to produce the image. Think about how much of what happens in our world now happens for the camera, for the feed, the staged moment, the manufactured controversy, the thing done precisely so it can be filmed and circulated. The representation precedes and produces the event. The map before the territory, again. He even made the notorious, deliberately provocative argument that certain wars had become so mediated, so absorbed into their own images and simulations and information management, that they functioned more as media events, as spectacles of information, than as the raw, brute reality we imagine war to be. A claim meant to shock us into seeing how thoroughly the image had come to overlay and replace our access to the real event. Let me give you one more crucial idea because it deepens everything. Baudrillard's argument that the hyperreal doesn't feel oppressive. This is what makes it so different from older nightmares of control. It doesn't feel like a prison, like being lied to, like being oppressed by a tyrant hiding the truth. It feels good. It feels like abundance, like freedom, like endless choice and stimulation and entertainment. The simulation seduces you. You are not forced into it. You are delighted into it. You would not want to leave because outside it there is only the desert of the real, the barren, meaningless emptiness where reality used to be, which Baudrillard describes as far less comfortable, less vivid, less satisfying than the glittering hyperreal you've been given. This is why the simulation is so total and so hard to resist. It's not that they hide the real from you and you long for it. It's that the hyperreal is more pleasurable than the real ever was, so you willingly choose the map over the territory, the image over the thing, the simulation over a reality that now seems drab and disappointing by comparison. We are not imprisoned in the simulation. We are in love with it. Now let me be honest with you about the criticisms, because Baudrillard is one of the most contested thinkers of his era, and a real education demands it. First, and most obviously, many philosophers find his work maddeningly abstract, deliberately obscure, and impossible to pin down or test. More provocation than argument, more art than philosophy. Second, critics charge that if you push his ideas to the extreme, they become self-defeating and even dangerous. If nothing is real, if everything is simulation, then how do you talk about genuine suffering, genuine injustice, genuine death? His provocative claims about war drew fierce accusations that he was dissolving real horror into intellectual wordplay, insulting to those who actually suffered. Third, some argue he mistakes a feature of certain media-saturated corners of wealthy societies for a universal condition of all humanity, that for most people on Earth, hunger, labor, and the body remain stubbornly, non-negotiably real. And fourth, that he offers no way out, no resistance, no hope, just a brilliant, seductive description of a trap with no exit. Hold all of this. Baudrillard is a thinker to wrestle with, not a prophet to believe. And part of his own point is that even he cannot stand fully outside the simulation to judge it. So let me pull the whole thing together, because Baudrillard has drawn a map, appropriately enough, of how reality itself dissolved. It runs like this. Once, images were faithful copies of a real world. Then they began to distort that world, then to hide the fact that the world behind them was vanishing, and finally to float completely free, copies without originals, simulacra referring only to each other. The copy came to precede the original, the procession of simulacra, until the model generates the real rather than the reverse. We now live in the hyper-real, a condition where simulation has become more real than reality, and there is no longer any real outside it to measure it against. Disneyland exists to hide that the whole country is Disneyland. Scandal exists to hide that there is no honest reality to return to. The flood of information devours meaning rather than creating it. Events are staged to become their own images, and the whole system seduces us rather than oppressing us, so that we choose the glittering simulation over the desert of the real, willingly, gladly, forever. And here is the reflection I want to leave you sitting with, because Baudrillard, underneath all the difficulty, is asking you a question about your own life that lands harder every single year. How much of what you experience is real, and how much is simulation? You fall in love with images of people before you meet them, and then measure the real person against the image. You visit a place you've seen 1,000 times in photographs, and the strange feeling that it looks just like the pictures, as if the pictures were the original and the actual place a copy. You experience the most important moments of your life half-turned toward a screen, composing them into images even as they happen, so that the representation and the event blur together. You know the world overwhelmingly through screens, through images and feeds and streams that refer endlessly to other images, with the actual reality somewhere far behind, increasingly hard to reach, and honestly, increasingly beside the point. You perform a version of yourself online that then loops back and reshapes who you actually are, a copy with no clear original. Baudrillard saw the shape of all of this in 1981 and named the thing we've been building ever since, a civilization that has replaced reality with a more seductive image of reality and then forgotten there was ever a difference. He can't hand you an exit. He's honest about that, and it's the one genuine despair in the book. But he can do the thing that all these difficult thinkers ultimately try to do. He can make you see the water you're swimming in. He can make you feel for a moment the strangeness of a world where the map came alive and ate the territory, where the copy killed the original and took its throne, where we scroll through infinite images of a reality we almost never touch and feel, somehow that the images are the reality and the touching would only disappoint. The most radical act left in a world like that might simply be to notice it, to catch yourself preferring the picture to the place, the feed to the face, the simulation to the disappointing, irreplaceable, unphotographed real. Baudrillard's whole difficult, dizzying, unforgettable book is an attempt to wake you for just long enough to ask the one question the hyper-real is designed to make you stop asking: what in all of this is actually real? And when did you last touch it directly, with nothing, no image, no screen, no simulation standing in between?